Just with a show of hands, how many of you guys are going to be for Hackillinois for the first time?
Wow.
All right. Hey, nice. We have a bunch of mentors first time. How many of you guys have had experience with open source in the past? Luckily, all our mentors have had experience with it. It would be odd if they didn't. But all right, and how many of you have ever contributed to open source? All right, a few scattered ones, so a lot of you haven't. Any freshmen in the audience? Nice, a bunch of you. All right, so this is a great turnout. Just to give you an idea of what we're going to be doing here is we have a bunch of mentors here, some really, really cool people who are doing amazing things, been in the open source community for many, many years. We're going to have them introduce themselves. There are a few questions that I'm going to throw out to them, and then we'll follow that with sort of an audience Q&A thing. And finally, after that, once the panel is done, we will have the project expo that was mentioned earlier, where you can get a better idea of every single project that will be directly mentored at Hackillinois, and projects that you could contribute to, and ways you could contribute to them. All right, let's get excited.
Let's get excited.
All right, starting from here, can we get introductions going? Just mention your name, project you're currently working on, how you got started in the open source community, and the abridged version of that, please. Followed by what are you looking to do at Hackillinois 2018?
Hi everyone.
Yes.
Hi everyone.
Can you hear me? Oh, there, now it's working. Okay, hi, my name is Jeff Bezanson. I'm one of the creators of the Julia programming language. So Julia is a very high-level language that runs really fast. And it's really easy to get into, actually. It's really fun and it's really powerful. And so I'm happy to help anyone who wants to work on programming languages and compilers. I can help you get up and running with Julia and show you how to contribute to it. And so Julia is mostly used for data analysis, any kind of scientific computing and machine learning. So if you're interested in those kinds of topics, I can also show you what's going on in our library ecosystem, and we can work on that as well. So hopefully I'll see some of you later.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Benjamin Coe. I'm one of the first few employees at a company called NPM, which does package management for JavaScript. So if you've ever done any open source JavaScript development, you probably use this. In my time at NPM, I've inherited a few open source libraries. I make Istanbul, which is a test coverage library for determining when you're running unit tests, how many lines of code you've actually executed. Also, I'm the maintainer of Yards, the pirate-themed command line argument parser. But I think what I'd love to get out of Hackillinois this year would be to work a little bit on Istanbul. I think there's some really exciting stuff to be done with test coverage. Chromium, the basis for the Chrome browser, has been adding native test coverage into it. And I'm really excited to try to kind of do some work between Chrome and Istanbul and try to have something that works with the native test coverage. Maybe we can even compile Chrome, maybe write some C++. It'd be fun.
You don't want to write C++. You can write Rust. Hi, I'm Ashley Williams. I was invited here because I sit on the board of directors of Node.js, and I most recently was a fellow colleague of Ben's at NPM, but I have recently moved over to Mozilla to work full-time on Rust. So I've got a couple of really neat projects, and you might be wondering, Ashley, isn't this the web area? You can write Rust to build web applications. So we have a couple of really interesting things. We have a package manager, much like NPM, called Cargo, and I would love to introduce that to a bunch of people. But additionally, I'm here to talk about WebAssembly, which is systems programming for the web. So I'm a bit of a spy from the systems area. But I got my start, we're supposed to talk about where we got our start. I'm going to change it up. But I got my start actually as a Ruby developer and was a maintainer on Sinatra for a bit, and also did a bunch of work with open data with Code for America. But yes, so I've got a lot of things, so come chat with me, particularly about Rust though.
Hi everybody, I'm Carol Woolley. Some of you may have met last year. It was great fun. I actually am a fellow and core developer in the Python world, but I'm here today to talk about Project Jupyter. And for those of you that haven't tried using Jupyter, it's a way to do interactive science and data science with visualizations, code, and prose. And it's sort of been very killer, I think. And I wanted to give a shout out to the US Ignite and the Midwest Big Data Hub. Open data, very important. And spend some time talking to them because what we do with data is going to be even more important the next 10 years.
Great. Awesome to see everybody out on a Friday night at U of I. This is what you do in the Midwest on a Friday night. That's awesome. I'm Austin, Texas. Travis Oliphant. I have been doing open source programming since I was a grad student 20 years ago. And I started the SciPy project and then wrote NumPy at BYU when I was a professor. And I've kind of really had a passion for just contributing open source and helping communities grow around it. Numba is a project, a compiler for Python. So I know Jeff, I've learned a lot from Julia. I like those guys, they're really awesome folks. What I'm here to help people get started with anything in the PyData ecosystem. So NumPy, SciPy, you want to trip to Scikit, you want to get into that ecosystem. Probably not, pandas, you got to go over here. I mean, I can orient you to the right people. But there are other things as well. I'm really excited about Jupyter Lab right now, which is one aspect of Project Jupyter. So if anyone wants to get into the Jupyter Lab community, I'm here to find people who can help do that. And then Conda 4 is another one. I started at a Conda 6 years ago. I'm actually started another startup now, so I'm in the business of finding people who want to go to work at companies, actually. So Conda 4 is, if you want to build packages, so my friend who does cargo, that's awesome. I've done a lot of packaging as well. Conda is a package manager. It's a cross-platform package manager that lets you do the same thing on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So you don't have to learn Brew and Yum and Chocolatey or something. You can just use Conda across those and install R and Python and Rust and NPM, whatever you want. So it's I can get you started in a community of Conda package building as well. So probably a few other things I could help people with if you want, but I'm happy to be here and thanks for having me.
Hi, I'm Philip Cloud. I'm here representing the Pandas project, which is a library for tabular data analysis in Python. So you can think of things like joins, group bys, and so forth. I got my start in open source by putting off my thesis in grad school. So, as a few really good open source developers have, who aren't here. Yeah.
I'm Jonathan Helmus. I work for Anaconda Incorporated. So this is the company that Travis helped found. I'm going to be hacking on Conda, which is a cross-platform package manager. If you want to learn more about it, if you want to actually fix some bugs, we could really use some people who know some more obscure shells like Fish or PowerShell, which I guess maybe isn't that obscure, but it's obscure for some of us. I got my start in graduate school. I didn't like the Fortran code that my advisor gave me, so I started with Python. So, yeah. Thank you.
My name is Megan Histand. I got my start in open source and data, with working for Deloitte and Booz Allen Hamilton for nearly a decade, working in their data analytics department. While there, I worked on numerous government consulting projects, mainly aimed at open data. Right now, I joined US Ignite about 1.5 years ago, and I've been working with the University of Illinois and Midwest Big Data Hubs on the Smart Gigabit Communities program. And this is a program that helps advance social good by engaging developers to develop gigabit applications to bring about transformative human benefits. And for all the applications that are created as a result of the program are open source, and so you can visit our website at usignite.org to learn more about these applications. And here we're hosting the reverse pitch, which I described earlier at the opening session. But it is aimed at using the City of Champaign's public works data to create data analysis and data visualization, as well as looking at data for microclimate analysis.
Hi, I'm Jason Coombs. I've been passionate about Python for over 2 decades now. I learned it early on building a compiler in my compiler's course, compiled Python to C++. And ever since then I've enjoyed the platform, the ecosystem. Recently I picked up a number of open source packages. I'm a maintainer now of setup tools, Keyring, CherryPy, and I've got a few projects that I'm interested in exploring. Some tickets I've opened on GitHub tagged with the Hackillinois 2018 tag. We have, so with CherryPy I'd like to explore some OAuth consumers and producers, PMX bot and IRC and Slack bot. I want to look at possibly making that more plug and play, monetizable perhaps, in the Slack App Store. And with the IRC package, maybe explore the async IO that Python recently introduced and make that available. The select event loop, which is what's there now. So, but, you know, I do Python all over the map, less so in the data and analytics areas as some of these others. But so if you have a Python project that doesn't fit into that space, I might be interested in helping out there as well. So let's talk.
All right, my name is Matt West. I'm a professor here in mechanical engineering. I guess I got my start long ago. Still on? Okay, there we go, that's better. All right, I'll start again. I'm a professor here at mechanical engineering. My name is Matt West. I got started long ago. I work on central computing and machine learning. So we've always had big, large Fortran codes, which we run on supercomputers, which are open source, and that's been fantastic. However, today I'm here representing the Prairie Learn project, which for anybody who is a student on campus, you probably know is running lots of our exams. So it's a auto question generation, auto grader, everything set up, which uses lots of the technologies that everybody else here has produced, which we're very thankful for. And we're looking for students to come and work on that together with a group of students, other students and faculty here who already maintain it.
My name is Guillermo Rauch, and I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Zeit. And we bring 3 open source projects here today: Now, Next, and Hyper. So Now is the easiest way to deploy your application anywhere in the world with just one command. So if you create any sort of demo during this hackathon and you just want to publish it, you just write Now in your terminal. What terminal do you use? Use Hyper, which is a terminal based on web technology. So if you want to check it out, go to hyper.is. Shabu and Alisa will be helping me out during this hackathon during this weekend. And Next.js is a framework for server-rendered React applications. We're passionate about this idea of minimizing latency. So your application code has to run everywhere in the world. The server needs to be able to render the data that you're interested in as fast as possible. That's why we created Next. And we think that all these experiences have to be extensible and open source. So go to Zeit, zeit.co, and zeit.co/OSS. And also, on a personal note, I started my whole career on open source, working through the internet when I was in high school in Argentina. So if you have any questions about business and open source, I sold 2 companies that were almost 98% built on open source technology as well. So you can also reach out to me with any sort of personal question or career advice and that sort of thing. I think I'm very, very passionate about this open source thing, and I have a few ideas about it. Thank you.
All right. Give me a round. Give me a loud round. Okay, excuse me. All the shouting together is starting to get a bit worked out. Again, before I sort of pose the first question here, give me a show of hands for people who've never contributed to open source before this. All right. Now that we have this number, first question to you guys, for all of these people who've never made their open source contributions before, sort of have minimal experience with anything beyond using these libraries and tools, how would you suggest they go about this? How do you suggest they make most of the following 36 hours? How do you suggest they get their start in open source, so to say? Whoever wants to start answering that.
So I'll quickly tell a story. When I was getting into open source, I got a little naive. I just went into it saying, oh, well, all I need to do is put together a patch, find a bug, find something that's bothering me, send it off, and obviously they'll just accept it and push it into the code base. And to make matters worse, I picked 3 projects that had notoriously hostile maintainers. The thing that really helped me was having a mentor, a hero of mine. He's also the author of Python 3.6's format strings, the F strings, and Eric Smith. And so I was going to DC Python and telling him about my problems, and he says, yeah, these things are hard, and here's how to work through them. So, find supportive people, find an environment where you can work with others and practice, and get better at the techniques that the communication, the other things, the steps that you'll go through to get your contributions added to the code base.
Or the 3 projects with very notorious maintainers.
So I would say.
Don't be afraid to start with something really small. Just pick some really minor, easy issue, because every project has lots of those, just to get your fingers moving and just to get into the workflow and just start that way. And just start getting some PRs merged, and that will right away people will start noticing you, and people already think you'll start to get a little bit of clout right away. And I would also say do not give up. So you might very well get PRs rejected. You might get hostile maintainers. It happens, but just don't give up. Just keep plugging away at it.
So open source can be intimidating, but one of the ways I've found to be very successful in open source, and I don't know if I necessarily recommend it, but if this is your type of personality, you might enjoy it, is to find the drudgery that the maintainers don't want to do and do it enthusiastically. So I became a maintainer on Sinatra, which is kind of like a Flask for people who are Python people, or an Express for no people, because Ruby was releasing a bunch of versions, and keeping the project out of dependency hell became a huge pain in the butt. And it was a lot of, change a version number, wait for Travis, change another version number. And I was like, you know what? I can do that. I can sit and do this. And it earned me a lot of credit, because I took the thing that was just this drudgery, this horrible task. It was a huge pain in the butt. There were some Sinatra builds that were broken. And spent the 3 hours and then just did it. And so that can be like a really awesome option, because once you put in that stuff and you show the patience, then you can start moving towards things that you find way more interesting, like API design or something. But if you just show up and go, this is not ergonomic, I want to fix it, they probably will shut you down. But if you kind of put in the work and do a little bit of the grind, you can earn yourself a lot of points.
So I used to work with a nonprofit that would go out to college campuses and help people make their first contributions to open source. And I'm going to say, making a contribution to open source the first time is hard. Second time, still hard. Third time, still hard. But the cool thing is, positive communities, projects where the maintainers really want your help. There are a number of projects and communities out there that really encourage new contributors and are set up for new contributors. One good resource that recently came on the forefront was on GitHub. There is an opensource.com guides, or open source guides, and that really gives you a flavor of what it's like to contribute to open source. Personally, I think find somebody you feel comfortable approaching. I am more than willing to help anybody. Last year, there was a gal that hadn't written any code, And we spent some time talking about whether she could, and she did, but not here. And you know, I just got a text from her earlier today that she now has a job at an AI company and writing code. So there are success stories that come out of this, and really, I want you to be successful. And don't underestimate the power of documentation. This is my little pet peeve. There are a number of people that think documentation is not code, and that's complete BS. Because anything that is building documentation at this point in time is code. Documentation has tests. But even more importantly, I'm a good developer. I spend probably 80% of my time writing documentation so that my other team members can get up to speed quicker. And really, open source is about communication, and it's about making those around you more successful.
I'm going to follow up. Writing is nature's way of letting you know how sloppy your thinking is. Yeah. The people who write those docs are the people who really know how it works.
That's a great point. One thing I'll mention is a lot of people raise their hands as never contribute open source. You actually have a power that I don't have. Many people here don't have anymore, which is you have that first look at a project. You know, when you've been in a project and you think, oh, this is easy, people should understand this, but it's not. You can bring that. So no matter who you are or what you are, you can bring that. Hey, I don't understand this. Maybe there needs to be better documentation, maybe better onboarding, maybe better something you can help people with. So everybody here, installation, I couldn't get up to speed. Jeff talked about getting your fingers busy, because there's a lot of pre-contributing. You know, people have setup. They've got to. When I've sat with my kids and got them set up, it's like, oh, I got to get a Git account. Then they've got to get you have to know what a terminal is. You have to know what a command line is. All of a sudden, going from 0 to anything is work, and none of that's actually ever necessarily documented anywhere. So people have to go through that all the time. So there's something you can absolutely do. I would say the most important thing to contribute to open source is to find something you care about, something you want to either learn about or do or participate in, because that's going to give you the drive to actually spend the time. It's going to take time. You're just going to scratch the surface today, and your success will come from what you do after today. The drive that it takes. So find something you love.
To work off what Travis just said, though, last year one of our most successful Hackillinois projects was actually the Rust Cookbook, which sort of was this tool to help people get from 0 to 60 on Rust.
I was just going to reiterate about seeking out communities that are kind to first-time contributors. Look for a code of conduct that actually says that we care about creating a good space for people. And I mean, most open source maintainers I meet who are successful are really kind people who care about building a community that's good to getting new people into it. I think it's absolutely the outlier that people are jerks on the internet. It's an outlier that people are jerks and become successful. Avoid jerks, don't put up with that.
And I'd like to echo the sentiment regarding learning from one another. This is like a safe place and a perfect environment to teach each other and learn.
We'll take like a couple more minutes. We don't want the panel running till the end of the night.
I'll add one more thing. Get a sense for the community before you get a sense for the code. Because, like he mentioned, the README of a certain project might not have the complete instructions for how to get started developing on it. Maybe there are some tests that are flaky, and you don't know if they're expected to fail or they're expected to pass. There's so many things that can happen when you actually start working. So what helps a lot is you log into the project's Slack, you log into the project's IRC, and you get a sense for the community first. Like, are these people that you can ask questions to, are they nice to what you're saying? And then finally you move forward and you start writing code. And in many cases what we do is we give pointers to people that reach out and ask, okay, how do I approach issue #153? And finally, GitHub has a good for beginners tag. So I think a lot of projects are moving towards flagging or tagging their issues as good for beginners. And obviously, it's pretty obvious a starting point there.
Okay, that's all.
Well, I guess you can finish this. A couple of nights ago, I was out and talking with someone, and somebody was asking me, how many PRs did you have to make to Rust so that Mozilla hired you so you got to work on it full time? And they were like, what huge magical PR did you make to get this job? And what I told them was that I didn't make any single large magical PR. Open source is a marathon, not a sprint. And it's a lot about this. We talk about open source sustainability a lot, and it's a lot about sustainability. So it's about doing little things and just kind of always being there. So in whatever you do, please don't think that the thing you did was too small. There's no too small PR. And yeah, I guess I'd just like to leave it with that.
I guess another way that I kind of got into the community was through Stack Overflow, and just almost like a game, seeking out questions that I could answer better than others, or that I could answer that nobody had answered, and finding, finding one that had been abandoned, had no answer, and needed an answer, and basically making that my problem. For the next 2 hours, I just researched it, investigated, because it was in the Python area, or it was in an area that I was interested in. And you do that for a little while, and you get better at it, and you start to establish reputation and spirit and community. So I would say I put Stack Overflow right up there with GitHub in terms of places to find contribution, places to contribute.
So I'm going to give an alternate view of Stack Overflow because it does provide a good service, but actually research has been done that for certain communities, women in particular, Stack Overflow is perhaps not the be-all and end-all. Like, women don't typically post on Stack Overflow or go to Stack Overflow. We would more likely go to our peers or to people that we work with, that we've built relationships with over time. So don't feel like there's one way to do open source, I think is the point, and do what works for you, and I think that was the point that was being made.
I agree with that.
So, kind of taking a tangent from getting started in open source to a lot of you obviously started off projects of your own, projects that have sort of grown into something really, really big. You mentioned the sci-fi project, a lot of different things going on here, but the audience out here, if someone sort of kicks off their own project, starts a new really cool tool, how do they take it from the small group of people who might know of it and use it onto probably a worldwide community, really big group of people actively contributing to it, actively using it, actively posting about it, talking about it, everything else? How do you sort of take that progression?
I would just echo Ashley's point that it's always a marathon. Like I have one fairly popular library called NYC that I thought was the coolest idea. It would be huge, and I threw it up on GitHub, and it got like 5 stars or something. And, but I've been running it for for years now, and just continue to contribute to it, continue to work on it, and so it's not the whiz bang. It's popular a lot of the time. It's just keep working on it, and if it solves a real problem, it will start to get an audience over time.
Yeah, and I'd also say with that, it turns out that coding is really just extremely rarely about actually writing code. And I think one of the best things that you can do is learn how to teach your code, because nobody can use it unless you teach it. And so that involves writing docs, but it also involves a small amount of marketing and then going and finding other people to help you extend the project. I think a lot of projects appear to be a single person that just kind of runs off and suddenly has this project. Unfortunately, programming has this horrible plague of kind of celebrity culture. But behind every project that's actually successful is an intense amount of people. And so that's going to mean communication skills, writing skills, teaching skills, marketing skills. And so I say the code, cool, you found a problem and you solved it well. Then you have to look kind of outside the code to expanding it to all of those other domains.
I love this topic. First, I have a couple of things to say about it. First of all, if you have an idea for a new project, stop and take a step back. and look around. And you might find that actually your idea is just a slight tweak on something that already exists. Right? There are a lot of projects out there right now that do a lot of things. And so you could just be yet another X, and then realize that it's something else. That's not to say there aren't new things to do, but likely the thing you're going to do is going to be associated with some other set of projects. Like most likely, if you have a successful new thing, it's going to be associated with something popular. Second, it's going to take time. You mentioned your project, you put it out there. So you put it out there, I've had lots of conversations with people. I've had the pleasure and privilege of being a part of some successful projects and watched them. And it doesn't happen in a day or a month or a week. In fact, my mean time to success is 18 months for the best project. Like, you've got an awesome project, then come back 18 months later and then look to see if you've got adoption. And that's not to say that you won't have a good successful project, even if it takes 3 years, I see 5 years, right? Sometimes that makes it difficult because you do need to be able to kill projects too. I've also been a part of projects that just need to die, right? And so that makes it tricky because you do have to figure out when is it time just to say, no, we're going to stop this. So don't get impatient. It's a marathon, it takes time. And then finally, yes, so building a project does take an initial core of people to start it because it's just human nature. You can't actually talk with 15 people. Like if you're trying to start a project with 15 people, you'd never do it because there's too many conversations that have to take place. So there's always an initial core. Usually, sometimes it's 1, but usually it's like 3 to 5. But then it's exactly right. It doesn't go anywhere unless that initial core spreads broadly enough to pull in the other needed things. Marketing is exactly right, communication, bringing new people in. So there's a lot of factors that go in. And therefore, so lots of factors go into making a product successful. And several that we haven't talked about yet.
Also, just quickly before someone else says something, if your project doesn't succeed, realize that also like 98% of success is luck, unfortunately. So you can work as hard as you want to. Oh, you guys?
Yeah, one more thing I forgot. Projects are successful because they solve a problem that other people have. It's not the best marketing in the world is not going to get your project if people don't really need it, right? People actually do need to need it. And so that could be timing. Doesn't mean that they won't need it later. Maybe you're too early. Maybe 10 years from now they need it. So it's a lot of, the reason it's viral is because you put it out there, yeah, people want it, they get it, and it fits with what else is there. So.
Yeah, definitely second that. If you want to make a big project, you have to make something people really, really want and really, really need. But then also, if you want to make a big project, you do have to think about how much time you want to put into it and what you want to get out of it, and kind of plan your life, so to speak. Because people do get burned out on open source. People can end up, they might have enjoyed it in the beginning, and they can end up in a situation where they're working full time, and then they go home, and in the evening, everyone is hassling them about their open source code, and it can be kind of a disaster. So you have to ask yourself, do you want to end up in that position? What would you do if you ended up in that position? So you have to think about that. So in our case, we actually worked on Julia for 3 years before we even released it. So it's definitely a marathon. So you have to decide what kind of time you want to put in. And then if you do want to put in a lot of time, you'll see the milestones coming up. You'll know when you need to start a mailing list, when you need to start a forum and chat. Maybe then you start having meetups, and you need to have stickers, and all of this stuff will eventually happens. You need to kind of ramp up that stuff at some point.
I always like to say, open source is not free as in freedom or free as in beer. It's free as in puppy. Which is to say, you'll be taking care of it for a really long time. Also, I did not come up with that. That's from Twitter or something.
Alright. Any other? A couple more questions. So, now that we've gone from sort of building this community around it, what do you guys think about maintaining that community? When you have really large projects, you have potentially hundreds of people who want to contribute to it, thousands, if not more, users of this project, people constantly flooding mailing lists with problems, people constantly posting to Stack Overflow about the problems that they have. Just this entire community around of people who come from very different backgrounds, have very different mindsets, different things that they want with the project, and how do you sort of bring them all under one umbrella and keep the project, govern the project, so to say, effectively?
I'm going to take maybe a negative approach here, but don't let your project overtake you. Governments, bugs, whatever, your life is more important and your well-being is more important. If it's, I'm going to make myself mad looking at GitHub, or I'm going to go spend time with my kids, or go spend time with significant others, do the latter. It's more important.
Great insights. And I will often tell people when I'm speaking in a venue like this, as a user of my project, you are not entitled to my time. You're entitled to me being respectful and courteous to you, but, you know, hey, you have to fix this now. No, really, I don't. Which is not to say that we don't want to, but the sense of urgency may be different for each of us. And I think the communities that last and flourish are the ones that have the codes of conduct, the ones that treat their contributors well, that treat their users with respect. And if there is somebody that is abusive within that community, they are told to be courteous or be gone.
A little bit to say about this. I've been doing, like some of the people here, for 20 years. I started as a grad student on SciPy, and it's been a baby. I've been passionate about it, but eventually you do have to step away to let it blossom. It's a lot like kids, actually. So I had 6 kids. I had 3 kids when I started SciPy. Right? So I understand work-life harmony. I understand the challenges associated with other people in your life that want your attention. And it's been something I've been battling with. And if I wouldn't say I've solved it. It's just something you constantly are thinking about. And it absolutely, people who use your code, I always wanted to help them, but I never felt like, you know, I never felt like they owned me, right? I felt a desire to help whenever I could. But you got to put people first in your life that should be first in your life. But I think stepping away really allowed other people, this was something I didn't really realize until it happened. When I stepped away and sort of like, I really can't respond to all this, other people stepped up and it gave them a chance actually to step up and shine. That was actually critical for the success of many of the projects I've been part of, was to get those other stakeholders excited. So there's more people out there that can help you.
So governance in open source is its own whole topic. Like if you're studying computer science, there are probably people studying political science right now that are going to major in how you govern open source projects. And there's a lot of different strategies out there. And there's a lot of success, and there's also a lot of rather intense failure about how projects can be governed. Speaking from the Rust project, the person who originally wrote the Rust programming language had his eye on the community from the absolute get-go. And so the key idea for him was like the very first commit to the Rust programming language repo was the code of conduct. And to a certain extent, people are like, well, gosh, don't you think all the people who don't like codes of conduct, aren't you, repelling them from Rust? And we go, yes. Yes, we are. And we are not sad about it. But one of the amazing things about Rust is we also didn't end up with BDFL, or Benevolent Dictator for Life, because the person who wrote the language stepped away from it and handed it over to an open governance system. And I think it's absolutely what you said. You see a lot of governance where the people who are running the project are the people who have been running the project forever. And if you let those people stay, you do not let your community grow, because you do not create growth opportunities and leadership for the other people in your project. And so something that the Rust programming language has been doing is we have a series of governing teams, and we're just rapidly expanding them, particularly this year. So another shout out, if you want to get involved in Rust, we want you to get involved, and we want to make you a leader. Because you'd be shocked to hear that a lot of open source is, we have a lot of extremely smart people, but we don't have a ton of people who are focused on growing leadership skills and really have those communication And that's extremely, extremely important. So again, I'm returning to the it's not all the code, but that it does really matter.
Yeah, I want to second that you have to delegate, you have to be willing to give people commit access, you have to let other people own parts of things. I mean, what you want to have happen is get to the point where someone else puts something in your project who has commit access, and you say, gee, I'm not sure if I like that, but that's their part of it, they can do that, and that's fine. I'm not gonna stop them.
So I think one thing that's very important is that you make all of the decisions for the project in a place that everybody can see. Otherwise, you end up losing the trust of your users and the community. So like companies that sponsor open source projects or work on them themselves, but then don't have a mailing list, or they basically just put up code and then work on it. And, they make breaking changes, and then it really loses the trust of their users. So making decisions is very important.
Yeah, I was going to add one more thing, which is define your own metric of success for your project. Because I think we're talking a lot about, oh, I'm overwhelmed because this project is used by 2 million people, or we're talking about, oh, I got 1 million stars on GitHub and things like that. But you can define your own metric of success. Your metric of success for an open source project might be that you and your team, or the person sitting next to you, improve some workflow they do on a day-to-day basis on the shell, for example. I'll give you an example. I have 2 little projects that I'll probably never change. One is called Spot, and it's a 50-line bash script that uses greps and grep and zargs and AWK, and it's just the search results look beautiful, and I don't have to memorize bash incantations. And every once in a while, I get a DM or a comment on Twitter of someone that found it, because it's not the thing that is going to be like the biggest open source project in the universe. But the people that have used it have told me, wow, like it's a joy to search for something in a directory now. So my point is, start with any sort of metric of success. Maybe it's some little project, and things like governance and things like that might come later. So don't get too overwhelmed also with, oh, I'm not succeeding fast enough, or I'm not aiming high enough, because a lot of things start as toys. The Linux kernel was introduced as a toy on a mailing list. And you never know what next toy that you're working on may be the next big thing. So it's better to approach it with a mindset of, oh, this is just a small thing. Obviously, it could get huge in the future, and there are a lot of things to worry about then. But also try to also keep in mind that success doesn't always look like 10,000 gazillion stars on GitHub, which can be easily manufactured anyway. So. Define your own metric of success with the people around you, with the community that reaches out when they're happy that they used it, and keep going.
If there's no one else who wants to come, we'll open the floor up to questions. All right, so if anyone has questions, sorry, raise your hand. We'll bring the mic to you. Ashley.
So one of the things you talked about was the urgency with which you fix issues in open source projects. Now, I get that for some issues, it's not so much a problem because it's more of a user problem than a you problem. But for open source projects that, for example, critical things that rely on have security issues, is that not some burden on you to fix those if your open source project has a big security flaw and it's being used in some critical applications?
Yes. 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 Yes.
For us, what we do is we have a protocol to respond to those. Everything from communicating to large users to filing a CVE and communicating openly on GitHub and Twitter. So there's a lot of things. I think there's no universal way of approaching the problem of fixing a security bug. Obviously, it can be discovered at 3 a.m. I think encouraging people to report security vulnerabilities on your README is a very important thing. Another thing that we wish we had done from the beginning is create a little mailing list that people can subscribe to and link to it from the README so that you can stay in touch with your big users. Because sometimes you don't know, like sometimes we've gotten emails 3 years later, oh, I've been using this project of yours at this huge organization, and we have never known. So it's useful to be in contact with large users, obviously. because the numbers matter when security is at stake. And finally, keep in mind now that GitHub has introduced this notification system. So if you file a CVE for a certain project, they'll try to find all the projects whose dependencies declare your project. So it's becoming more automated and easy actually to deal with security, but it's always a thing that has to be dealt on a case-by-case basis.
Mike's
I actually had a project I contributed to. One of the tokens from one of the maintainers was stolen last week, and someone published a Bitcoin miner in it. So I woke up at like 6 a.m. in the morning with an email that said this big project that's installed 20,000 times a day is now a Bitcoin miner. So I guess the point I'm getting to though is like you're still one person working on the project potentially, right? Like because I was literally getting a coffee and getting yelled at by people, and I got pretty pissed off. I was like, I'm literally drinking coffee right now. I'm gonna fix this when I'm done with my coffee. But I don't know. There's it's complicated.
I mean, it's worth remembering that you can only fix it as fast as you can fix it. Like, we're all just humans. I mean, Spectre and Meltdown happened in like how many, like, it still took a couple days to, it's still getting kind of worked out. So, yes, it's important, and it's important to show the respect. Like, this is the thing about respecting your users. There needs to be a mutual respect where your users respect you as a human, you respect your users as a human, but we all kind of have to understand, like, the code only gets written as fast as the code gets written.
We have another question.
So in the opening ceremony, there was a lot of talk about money and prizes. I was wondering how you guys approach supporting your open source work, and like the difference between a company sponsoring a project or a foundation, or bootstrapping it yourself.
Yeah, Travis, you mentioned you had 3 kids when you started sci-fi.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this problem for 20 years, you can imagine, because how am I going to support my 3 kids? In fact, I read a ton of economic literature trying to figure that question out, because I love contributing open source. I had no idea how I was going to support my family doing it. Still trying to figure it out, actually, in many ways. I've done a lot of experimenting since then, and I've observed a lot of experiments as well. It's an important question. I think there are a lot of challenges. It's not a simple answer. This is a good example. Like, usually when your code gets to production, you have enough people around you that you can kind of lean somewhere. But I think it illustrates there's a problem still in open source that we haven't fixed. And there's potentially innovation there to help people actually spread the load. But there's good things happening. There's foundations that exist. That's why I started NumFocus as a foundation 6 years ago, precisely to try to be a part of the help, create a foundation that helps. I started a company 6 years ago so I could make money to drive that towards open source, experiment with that, do another company to be able to push money towards open source. And many people are doing the same. Another company owner down there. There are differences, because then you stumble into things like, oh, as a company doing open source, you got to make sure you're involving people. Even though you're so excited, you're paying 6 people to write open source, and you're excited by the progress, you're not going to engage the community if everything's just being that tiny little group of 6 people. So I think there's still opportunity for innovation in how this is done, which is why some of you in here may come up with better solutions than exist already.
Sorry, I got too excited because you were like, there is a problem with the economics. So if anyone wants to talk about capitalism with me, they can go ahead and find me after, because I might get kicked off this panel about it. But the thing that I'll tell you right now is, like, if you write open source code, I mean, if you're learning right now, so it's okay, but otherwise, get paid. It's not worth it. Corporations right now are using a ton of open source, and there's a lot of really awesome stuff about that, but fundamentally, they are burning out people who are not getting paid to work on this, and this is actually a serious problem. Like, your life is not worth, like, funding somebody to work, like, to use your software so that they can make their software in a way that is not open for less money. Like, we're seeing a bunch of enterprises loving open source because, honestly, the return on investment is extremely high because the investment is zero. So this might be a little bit negative on my part, but I would say right now, I love open source. But it is a huge economic problem right now, and I am watching all of my peers burn out tremendously. So keep an eye on that and advocate for yourself because you are worth it.
Just to follow up on the economic stuff, for those of you that are interested in economics, the economics of cybersecurity is fascinating and in many ways parallels open source funding and who's free riders, externalities. It'd be fascinating, but yeah, I mean, there's different ways to fund a project. It depends on the size, and Jupyter's a nonprofit research grant funded primarily with some industry partners as well.
Also, there are plenty of fine people here who have started foundations. I literally sit on a foundation. Just because a project has a foundation and is raising money does not mean that you as a contributor are ever going to see it. That money goes back in to get more enterprises, to give them more money, to go back in and get more money. So it very rarely trickles down. Sorry, obviously I have a...
No. Maybe that's the way it works. Yeah, we should do it differently than focus.
I don't know if on that vein or not, but I mean, why I was so excited and applied to NPM for a job so early on was that I knew it would give me a chance to get a salary and work on open source, which, I mean, if you are passionate about open source like I was, there are companies you can seek out that are going to let you do your work somewhat in the open and are going to let you open source the stuff you do, so you just need to seek it out.
So I can say that, so Julia, even though it's not Python, we are actually a num-focused project because they're really good folks over there. And so what that basically means is if you have an open source project, you can find an existing nonprofit entity to kind of take you under their wing. And that way you can start collecting donations and that kind of thing without doing hardly any paperwork, and all the difficult legal part is taken care of. So this is called a fiscal sponsorship agreement. And this is sort of the easiest way to start. Like, you can put up the donate $5 button on your website or something if you can find something like this. There are a few of these organizations that will take in open source projects. That's like the easiest way to get started with that.
We're like almost out of time here, so if you could take closing remarks on this question and just to the panel in general, then we can move on to the project exploration portion. Sorry about cutting you off here, but hey, if anyone has questions, our mentors are around the next 2 days, so please go and bug them. I'm hoping that's okay.
Absolutely, that's why we're here.
But yeah, if there's any closing remarks, any of you want to give them any words of wisdom?
Like the Python fund over here. I hope we gave you a pretty honest view of open source. I hope we didn't scare you away because I think there's some wonderful things about open source. You get to work with amazing people who are passionate about what they're doing. And for those of you that are looking to be on the cutting edge of technology, or, I know I personally, without open source, wouldn't have been able to take 15 years off to raise my family if I couldn't jump back in and stay up with things during it. And I couldn't have done that if it was proprietary.
Yeah. Excellent. Open source is worth it. There's problems to solve. I love what Ashley said. Get paid. It's important to get paid. Open source is too important to be left to volunteers. That's what I said when I started Anaconda. I still believe it. At QuantSite, a new company, I hire people and we try to figure out how to work on open source as much as we can. It's an important thing though to get paid. Very good. Yeah. So I actually have 6 kids now. I started with 3. I have 6. I've been able to support my... No. Good point. That's another 20. But I care passionately about this, as you can probably tell, hopefully. I don't know all the answers, but I'm excited to keep discovering them with people, especially with the great people you meet. I'll echo Carol, you meet some amazing people, you learn, you open to learn, you're going to have to learn. You think you know things now, 20 years from now, you're going to still understand what you don't know yet. You're grateful for what you learned. There's still more to learn. And there's really, really good people in open source you'll meet. Just keep that in mind as you get involved.
I'll just say one more thing. Sometimes it's okay to just have fun and write open source for no other reason than fun. not everything has to solve a very specific problem or be the next, huge project and that's Hadoop for something. Sometimes just, spend a weekend and do something that you think is fun. Put it on GitHub because maybe somebody else will. It's fun.
Take like one more thing. We're basically out of time here.
Sure, so I just wanted to say, I think while you're a student, it's a great time to get started on this. You've heard a number of people who spent their grad school years basically writing code, and I think it's fantastic. Whether you're undergrad or grad student, there's lots of people right here on campus. There's lots of projects that exist here on campus. This building is full of a number of major open source projects that are always looking for more people to be involved. So I think this is just a really ideal place. Obviously, things like Hackillinois make that really easy.
Give me a loud round of applause, please. Thank you so much, guys. We have a little gift for you guys. All right. And guys, please stay here. The Project Expo is going to happen here. Also, quick announcement, a bunch of our mentors are actually, well, data mentors. So they've done a lot of different things with Python and data and stuff. Tomorrow will be the first meetup, the Champagne PyData meetup at Murphy's, which is a pub close by, at 6:30 p.m. So 6 p.m. All right. So if you're going to be working with Travis or Carol here, they can let you know when they're headed over. Yeah. You get books down. And